Alright people, so welcome to our Teach Meet at the National Education Summit. The turnout is amazing. That's for the podcast, not for the filming, don't worry. So we're filming this and it'll go up on YouTube, and we're recording it for Cameron Melch's TER Podcast. And so what this is a Teach Meet, so it's just teachers presenting on what they're especially passionate about or interested in. We do 2-minute or 8-minute slots, and that's pretty much it. It's sometimes called an unconference, so it's weird that we're having an unconference at a conference, but here we are, regardless. We've got 8 presenters today, and they're all going to speak for 8 minutes on the topic that they're choosing. Myself and Josh have put this together, and so it'll go me and then Josh, and then so on and so forth. Video cannot be loaded, but we're on Aboriginal land and we recognise the elders past, present and emerging. So these are our topics. I'll talk about global threats to teaching, Josh will talk about student voice in inquiry, and so on and so forth on the list. So firstly, this is me. The things I'm passionate about are fluent learning, instructional video, teachers across Borders Australia. We're an organisation that goes to Cambodia to teach Cambodian teachers. So if that's something you're interested in, hit me up. And also edu-reading. So I run a research-based group of teachers. We read research each month and we discuss how it relates to our practice. Okay, my topic for today is global threats to teaching. So I've been doing a little bit of research lately, which is always a dangerous thing for me to be doing. And I've been finding a lot of people discussing blended learning as a threat to teaching, in the sense that they use the phrase to mean a combination of flipped learning in a way that bypasses teachers and actually replaces teachers in many cases with either AI, an iPad program, or some sort of adaptive technology. So my question to you, as we're all here at a partly technology-focused conference, is does your use of technology logically lead to any of the above ideas? So think about the way you're using technology in class. Do any of the technology uses that you do as a teacher bypass you as a teacher, or in any way make you less important as a teacher? And I hope the answer to that would be no, but I think my examples will illustrate that it's a little bit more of a concern than you might have already thought beforehand. Maybe. Okay, so in terms of Australian context, it all starts with Gonski 2.0, which is, couldn't tell you the year, 2015-2016, but it basically pushed for a personalised learning agenda in Australia. And so that's kind of the starting point where you start to think, well, if the only way to deliver personalised learning is without a person in front of it, or with technology-assisted support for that person. So that's the Australian context. If we look at Bridge International as a company, they're operating out of Africa, or the Global South as it's sometimes called. So instead of teachers, they have learning facilitators, which are untrained teachers. And as you can see in the image, you have one teacher. That class size probably isn't representative of what actually happens. But you have one leader per school, so one principal, no APs, no leading teachers, no learning specialists. And the teacher, or learning facilitator, simply has an iPad that tells them what to do for the lesson. So it would say, tell students to open their books, make this joke, pause for laughter, ask them to get their pens out, rule up their margin from the left-hand side, and so forth. So these people are not what we would call teachers in a traditional sense, but rather they're paid adults who are not in and of themselves teachers. And you can imagine how that would destabilise a country if you took out the actual teacher development aspect of education that we're all involved in. Then, our next example is the African School for Excellence. So they have 3 primary modes of learning. Student to student, so as one student says in their promo video, we learn best from each other, which, as we would all know as teachers, is not true. The other thing they do is small group discussion, so that's the only part of the day when they're actually directly with the teacher, and the other third of the day is committed to their own independent work. So again, you can imagine how that would lower costs for schools if you take out that many teachers and replace them with adults who don't need a qualification or a degree. Then you have obviously a whole bunch of issues, but you also have a very cheap model that you can say the government is a lot cheaper and a lot easier to roll out and scale across the world. Then a more closer to home example, we have Old School from the USA. They have more software engineers in their school than they do teachers, so that's a similar example. It comes to us out of Facebook algorithmic thinking. Students don't complete work, they work from playlists of personalised learning. It's recently closed down with the CEO saying that if you're thinking of starting a startup, the first thing you should do is stay away from education because it's 20 times more complicated than he initially thought, which we as teachers would all already know as a fact, but regardless, this guy had all the big names behind it, had Facebook behind it, billions of dollars of support, and it still failed ultimately because the thing that was missing was teachers, and obviously teachers and relationships are the core to the education process, which may not be true for adults. As adults, it could maybe take less of a role. If you're an adult, you might like online learning or something similar, but if you're a Year 9 student, you really need that relationship. You need to be motivated, and you need the loving support of a teacher. Alright, I believe this is the last example, Summit Learning. So this is directly from Facebook. Recently in America, some Year 11, Year 12 students walked out of their school because of the way this Summit Learning was being poorly rolled out. The teachers didn't actually understand how to use it. They said it was too easy, and students just spent hours and hours sitting in front of the screen without any input from a teacher. Obviously, as we know, everything we know about Facebook tells us that there's data concerns as well, so all of their data is being harvested, not just their names, their dates of birth and so forth, but actually their learning data, so you can extrapolate from that how intelligent they are, what kind of jobs they might like, and therefore what sort of products they have, so it's really quite a complicated data thing. And of course it's being poorly implemented, and so students are walking out. That's a good local example in the sense that it's America, but if you can transport that into a less developed nation, you can imagine the students will have the gumption to walk out of classes, and they're more or less just going to get what they're delivered, and then that's how you get a digital divide between those that are delivered education by teachers and those that are delivered education by technology. And then this is my favourite, Carpe Diem, so it's only just recently closed down. People quite often talk jokingly about the call centre model to education. This is exactly that. All the students wear brown chinos, they clock in the morning and they check into their call centre cubicle. There's only 6 teachers total in the school for about 1,000 students, and as they proudly say, it's one of each. So they've got 1 English, 1 Humanities, 1 Maths, 1 Science, and 1 PE teacher, because of course you can't virtually complete physical education as much as we'd like. The phrasing they use is coaches and assistant coaches, so anytime there's a strange phrase thrown around in the school, you probably know for sure that they're not teachers, but they're just people pretending to be teachers, and in this case, coaches and assistant coaches is their code word for untrained teachers. On their website, they promoted that they actually have excellent outcomes, but as a charter school, they were closed down for the fact that they weren't meeting minimum standards 2 years in a row, and as a result, the entire school was closed down. So to me, all of this stuff combined tells us that there are people and places in the world where teachers are being disemphasized and challenged directly and being replaced by technology. And so I think that's something we should be aware of as we kind of look to innovate with technology and think about the way that we are establishing ourselves as the prime element in education. Thank you.
All right, hello everybody. I have a loud voice, so this may or may not be good for your ears. My name's Josh. Some of you might know me as my virtual entity of Mr. B Laminates. I am a real person. But I'm a Year 6 teacher at Canterbury Primary. I'm a 5/6. I'm a team leader. I'm a literacy leader, and I have some other certifications to make me look like I'm doing a good job. I am Canadian, so that gets away our awkward "Are you American?" conversation, or later if you come talk to me. You can ask me about building relationships with kids, probably my biggest focus, student voice and agency. Today we're going to talk about inquiry and high-impact teaching strategies. In this 8 minutes that I have, I'm not going to teach you how to do an inquiry. It's almost impossible. I don't think I'd be able to do that. But what I've learned from this last about a year and a half of really trying to broaden my network of educators was how different schools are. So I'm really just trying to give you perspective on if you are at a school, I'm sure, or a school that's doing inquiry. I'm really just hoping that you can see how my school does it, just so that you can see there are different ways. I kind of put a tweet out earlier about how people do inquiries, and I know a lot of people are on 2-year cycles. A lot of people know what they're probably going to be doing, Geography 2021 Term 2. My school doesn't do that. I know there's a lot of rigors to the curriculum and things like that, but I'm just trying to give you a bit of a different spin. And I think that if you're like me, if someone else is doing it, you could probably do it too. It's probably not the best example because if your kid was doing something, not right and everyone else starts doing it, you'd have like anarchy. But I think in this stage, it's really important. That perspective will help you. I have a couple of quotes from Michael Fullan. If you don't know who he is, please Google him. But he is an educational reform guru, I guess, and he also is the lead for New Pedagogies for Deep Learning, which my school practices or is part of that cluster. He says that, I think this is one of the most important quotes that really led my journey of inquiry, is that one thing he says to principals and teachers is that your job is not to implement government policy, it's to exploit it. And to me, exploiting the curriculum is probably the biggest key factor there. You don't have to follow the curriculum to the letter. It's your job as a teacher to exploit it and change it to make it as relevant and engaging to the kids that you're teaching at that moment. Another quote that I have is that those who are able to do something don't ask for permission. They think it's going to work, they just do it. And I think that at my school, I'm really lucky. My principal gives me tons of autonomy and our teachers tons of autonomy because that's the culture that we have there. I know that other schools are more rigorous, but again, doing it, showing that it works is probably a good step in the right direction. It's a proactive step. So I'm going to give you a case study of what we did just last term. And I've done lots of these over the term with my team, over the years with my team. So it's just one case study, and I'm just lucky to show you exactly kind of how we've done it, and maybe give you a really small guideline, I guess, of how you can do it as well. So we did this unit on the future, on futurism. And right away, futurism is not in the curriculum, fully understand that. However, at our school, we really embrace teacher interests and student voice and put them all together to try and create something that's super meaningful. These are just some pictures from what it has, and I'll go into it a little bit more. The way we look at curriculum in a very simplified way is in these four things, and I'm sure, like at my school, it's definitely a lot more complex, but there's one thing here that you can take is that you first need to have a seed. You need to immerse students into whatever that topic is. You need to integrate literacy and numeracy and other strands, obviously, and then you need to create something, create an experience. My school is not about symposiums or museums or exhibitions. We're about experiences. We put on something for the community that they can interact with, touch, and taste. This scene was actually from me, myself. I saw these do-it-yourself holograms on YouTube, and I thought it'd just be super cool to create them. From there, it turned into this whole futurism topic through our planning day. Then we asked the kids, well, what are you curious about when you think of the future? We asked them that, and they started giving us all this, wow, that is bright. They started giving us all these answers through collecting our student voice data. So basically, they gave us, 10, 12 different responses that had the most amount of votes. The biggest ones that we had were architecture, food, transportation, fashion, technology, space, and AR/VR. So as teachers, we focused on those to create workshops and focus groups for those kids who want to focus on, to pursue those investigations. We then had this immersion day. Immersion day is a full day of just experiences. It's super fun. Even the teachers get a lot of fun out of it. But we had, virtual reality in space. We had cricket tasting, because sustainable food for the future. We had these VR pods where kids can go in there and just have a good experience. And all we're meant to do at this point is just create as much anticipation and excitement for the unit as possible. It's probably the most fun day of the term, and it happens before every single term. From there, we collect data. And all we do is we collect data on what students want to pursue moving forward in the unit. Then we integrate. So then we start in our plan, we start saying, okay, well, what can we start to put in through literacy and numeracy and science? We like to use Newsella quite a bit, so for our nonfiction text, we always make sure that our literacy is coming down with meaningful things so that they can have those skills and knowledge to create what they're going to create later. In writing for this particular thing, we did graphic novels. Again, not something that's in the curriculum, but narrative is, so we can play around with it as much as like that. We looked at dystopian futures, so vocabulary and theme and genre as well, and we had them reading these kind of books like Hunger Games and Maze Runner and Divergent, just to get them to explore a different genre or theme. They then made their own graphic novels that were dystopian, so it was really interesting. We did shape and 3D shape, and that will come into a little bit more when we talk about architecture. And obviously one of their interests was space, so it's a really easy connection to make. At the very end, we create. So these are pictures from what we do. We get like 300 people coming out to these. We have a very engaged community, so it's really great, but they're used to it by now. They understand that they're supporting student learning, but they're also really fun. You can see on the table on the right, those are all cricket-based muffins and foods that we ground them into flour, and we use to make things people could actually eat. There was all these different other sources of food that one teacher actually was a focus on. My focus was the architecture group, so you can see the picture, that bottom right there for you. That was one of the cricket muffins, and this was the reading corner that we had with some of all the graphic novels. I do have videos, but they can't be loaded, so it's really a shame. On the one video over here on the left is actually one of the holograms that we created from the original seed, and it's like my face saying welcome to the future. And the second one shows that in the architecture group, when these kids use their knowledge of 3D shape to create skyscrapers and buildings of the future, they incorporated augmented reality. So if you came through it, you could actually scan the building, and then like a flower garden would pop up, which was really interesting as well. So there's a lot of combinations. You can understand why in 8 minutes I cannot tell you everything they need to do, but just trust me, we did front load them with literacy and the skills and knowledge that they need to do to make these predictions of the future. It wasn't just like, make that building. And then finally, these are the curriculum links that we actually assessed on. And a lot of the questions I get from my friends are, well, how are you accountable to the curriculum? We definitely are accountable to the curriculum, but it's probably not the first thing that we think of. Our job as teachers, personally, or as a school, we think is that we need to find out what our interests are from the kids, and it's our job to link it to the curriculum, not in the other way around. We can't look at the curriculum and go in order. It just won't work. And you wonder why engagement is lower, why there's behavior issues in certain classrooms. It's just the same things then over and over and over again. So our job is to be as creative as possible. And we do proficiency scales, we use rubrics, we use all the assessment tools that teachers need. We just do this last. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please come ask me. I'll be around.
Okay, if you stop hearing me and you want to hear me, which is debatable, you can just stick your hand up and I'll speak more loudly. I'm from We Teach Well, I'm Carolyn, and I'm interested in those 4 things, none of which I'm going to be, well, only a little bit. The bottom 2 I'm going to be talking about today. There are 2 co-founders in We Teach Well. There's me. I've been working on the business for about 2 years, and I love Google. I do everything in Google, and I put it on my Google Drive, and it's so easy. The other co-founder is Judy, and she's just finished teaching at a school in Queensland that uses Microsoft, and she likes Microsoft. She doesn't like Google, she likes Microsoft. I don't like Microsoft, and I like Google. That wouldn't be a problem if these 2 different thingy-jiggers talk to each other, but they don't. You'd think that in 2019, this wouldn't be a problem. Neither would it be a problem that I use a Mac and she uses a PC. But they don't play well together. When she uploads a PowerPoint to Google Drive, the formatting changes, and what I see in my screen is not what she sees on hers. Well, this happens with fonts, with documents, and with images. Even if I download it onto my desktop in PowerPoint, it still doesn't look the same as what it did for her. We spent a really bad few hours last Monday sharing her screen, then sharing my screen, then sharing her screen, until we managed to get a presentation that looked the way we wanted it to. This may only seem like a small thing, but there are far wider implications. Google, Microsoft, Apple, Toshiba, Lenovo, HP, and Adobe. Just a few of the tech companies that were at the recent EdTech Australia conference in Sydney in June. I don't know how many of those people are here, I just hope they're not listening. There are certified educators, badging, and all sorts of bits and pieces which at first glance seem really fantastic. But what happens later? What happens when Judy loves the design feature in PowerPoint and I hate it? And I hate it because it won't let me change things. And I'm not prepared to allow my tech to tell me what I can and can't do. And that's just in design. What happens when a school is signed up to one of the seemingly generous packages with one tech company, but then finds that it actually doesn't do all the things that the teachers need it to do? And even worse, what if a teacher is trying to load something they have worked on at home, and let's face it, who doesn't? And it won't present accurately at school. Unfortunately, as with most things, teachers need to be much more proactive in controlling the conversation around technology. First of all, we need to vomit on the next person who slams teachers and says that they need to innovate. I suggest we stick them for a month in a Year 9 and 10 class of disengaged teenagers and see how well they innovate. But seriously, school admins are under pressure just as much as teachers are. People may give grants to buy technology and innovations, while we know that the verandas are crumbling and the students are hungry. But there are no funds for those things. What we need to ensure is that teachers keep admins informed as to what technology is best for their classrooms and which will offer the best value. There are 2 really good articles that have been published in the last year, and I'm forgetting that mistake, but there we go. One was in an Australian one in Education Headquarters in December, which spoke about the ecological and ethical issues around not being sure of what we need. They talked about how if you're tied up with one particular program and they want you to update your devices every 2 or 3 years, whether you need to or not, what happens to all those dying devices? The other was written for the British Education Endowment Foundation in January of this year, and it's really good. It's an excellent article that debunks some of the mythology around about tech in school. It is and it reiterates what teachers have always known. Tech does not improve education. Good teachers who can use tech wisely and well are what improves education. Schools need an independent voice to advise them on the best value for tech. I would strongly recommend the Australian Computer Society. They're like a governing body for tech in Australia, and they just launched their education arm about a year or so ago. The lady that heads it up is called Catherine Newington. There are hundreds of free resources there. They run workshops, free workshops for teachers and give advice on different types of technology. I would encourage you to have a look at those articles because they say things much better than I do. That's it. Thank you.
Well, as the slide says, my name is Michelle Borderick. I am currently the leading teacher of numeracy at Dallas Brooks Community Primary School. I've been there for the last 3 years, so I run the numeracy intervention enrichment. We are a Microsoft showcase school, so a lot of our tech is Microsoft. And Troy is a person who comes around to our school quite often. Anyway, things I'm interested in naturally is maths. And how we need to change our mindset on how we see maths and things you may have known about with number talks and good questioning and differentiation. So, what I discovered a couple of years ago was this amazing book by Joe Bowler, Mathematical Mindsets. And this is a book that I gave to all the people in my PLC, and we all read it. It's an easy read. It's about 9 chapters long, and it's really anecdotal in the way she writes beautifully. And she says things like we already know. There's no such thing as a maths brain. You are not born with a maths brain. And you know, you've heard parent-teacher interviews where the parent says, you know, they're not good at maths because I was never good at maths. Maths is not genetic. You don't inherit genetics, mathematics. So the way we learn maths is by being excited. What we need are people who are not scared. We need courageous people going, you know what, if I fail, I fail. I'll just pick myself up and go on. And it all comes from, Carol Dweck does a forward in the book, and she talks about growth mindsets versus fixed mindsets. So saying that I'm a maths brain, although I've never been any good at maths, is what we hear teachers say a lot of the time. And when we say that all the time, what do our children start thinking? The same thing. And it's about, geez, I don't go into literacy and say, if I'm the fastest at spelling a word, I'm the best person in English. But if I'm the fastest in maths at saying 6 times 6 is 36, then I'm the best at maths. So how do we create conditions then for productive struggle? And you see my little caption. Mistakes are a good thing. And I've worked hard with the teachers I work with and the students, and over the course, the junior students are better at it, of being okay with mistakes. And they're now starting to celebrate and go, oh look, Mrs. Bordering, I made this error. Cool, can you tell me how you went wrong? And they'll tell you. Or I'll get one of our more, thank you, that's the word. More able child, or you know, who's finished their work and they work together, and I'll say, can you go and see where this person went wrong? Because you know, it's in me reiterating what I've done, I get my knowledge deeper. And again, Joe Bowler, the brain sparks and grows when we make a mistake, even when we're not aware of it. And this is something I tell my students when I coach with them and I teach with them. Every time I said, the amazing part about your brain is we need to get more grey matter. And the only way to do that is to make mistakes. Because once you make a mistake, you know you're never going to do it again. And so a couple of the rules I have with them in maths is, I will never give you the answer. I will never tell you if you're right or wrong. And they know that. They get better at it, but they don't like it at the beginning. They go, don't bother asking Mrs. Border, she won't tell you. I also say you're allowed to copy from each other. That's provided you have your own answer first. So why do I say we copy? We collaborate. I start talking to my friend and go, how did you get 6 times 6 is 37? I got 36. Let's figure it out. And from that we collaborate, we figure out, oh, okay, I just miscalculated. This is a very simple problem, of course. And also I try to encourage students not to use erasers. When I do maths, we use grey lead. And I see kids mad, or they scribble. I say, oh no, don't do that because I need to see where you've gone wrong. So encourage our mistakes. So it leads me, again, all schools do different ways. They call number talk, so we talk about different ways. How can you make 10 in different ways? So it starts with juniors all the way up to seniors. You can talk about anything. Simply as, tell me everything about 8. And I show the children and they sit there, and again it leads to the differentiation. I've got my PSD child who go, oh, I can see that's 4 and that's 4. Now if I just gave them the whole sheet of work, they wouldn't know that 4 plus 4 is 8. But they look there and go, oh, that must be 8 because I've been told that it's 8. And it's really important, I'm going to go in my little numeracy part, that we know everything about 0 to 9 before we do anything else. My other favourite website I use with the seniors, the 3s to 6s, even the juniors, is which doesn't belong. Now just looking at this, the first thing children do is, I don't know. And you just let them sit. And I have a system with them, if once you've got something, put your thumb here. Because every child who puts their hand over here, suddenly my friend goes, I must be very smart because my hand's not up. But I can't see that their thumb is here. And for those kids who've got it straight away, I go, well, give me another way. Again, that's that Peter Sullivan working in, your low ceiling, high floor. For the kids who get it quickly, is there another way? They go, oh. And again, Bit of audience participation. Tell me which one doesn't belong and why. Which one? 43 doesn't belong. Why? It's a square number. It's not a square number. Sorry, I couldn't. The rest are square numbers. 9 is a square number because 3 times 3 is. And then the children have to explain all it, because I'm not going to do it for them. They have to say, why is it not a square number? Anyone else got something even more brilliant? Go. 16 is the only even number. And then I've got my PSD child, like I tell you not. She said 9. Why? It's the only one with one number in it. And you know, and our really high kids go, wow, and then this child feels well upset. I've contributed to class. This is an excellent website. It has numbers, graphs, pictures, shapes, name, you name it. Questioning and reasoning is part of our proficiencies. They're in our curriculum, but they've sort of gone to the ether. So another really good website I discovered this year is the Resolve website. It's an Australian website, and it's all about reasoning. The school I come from, we are 95% EAL. So when I say to the teachers, we need to get the students articulating, they go, oh, they don't know what to say. Yes, they do. So I challenge them. And these are the reasoning trajectories: you analyse and generalise and justify. And this is a challenge I give to the teachers. They have this in their room. When we start, they choose one question for the week as part of their success criteria. And from children, from the foundation, what's different? What do you notice? Those are questions they can say. Which ones belong? What do you notice? And the best thing they always say to me is, prove it. Everywhere now, I hear it makes my heart sing. They say, prove it. And the other great thing with the Resolve website, they have made to order brilliant activities that are differentiated. They even have open your books, as you may, and they're open-ended. And I'm going to leave it there. So these are the websites I've looked at. This is a couple of books I've got for you. Feel free if you want to come and talk to me afterwards about maths and how brilliant it is. All you need to do is be engaging. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Lynn Telfer, and one thing that I discovered about 5 years ago was this weird thing called Minecraft. My daughter at the time was 12 years old, and she basically went on to this online game where you could chat. I freaked. The first thing I did is got on with her just to see what was being said, what kind of bullying and harassment and horrible things were said. It was beautiful. These people were builders, creators, and what they were saying was, hey, I'll show you how to build, and hey, that's beautiful, and I'll show you how to do even this better. And it got to the point that I realised this is a beautiful community. So I got a little bit addicted to it, and I started building. And my daughter and I learned how to build a house, and then I learned how to build a castle. We learned how to build dragons and all this fun stuff. And then the best part, I got to meet some of the big famous YouTubers, and I started building for them. And what I discovered is that there are teenagers out there making thousands of dollars building in Minecraft. I know because my company now hires them. So one thing that did happen was one of the YouTubers called PB Jelly Games. By the way, all the YouTubers I deal with are PG YouTubers. And he said, Lynn, do you want to do something with Minecraft and education? And that's when I discovered that he's actually got he's an entrepreneur and he's done a lot of stuff in education. Brilliant! So me being a full-time teacher, I've been teaching in the day, and then I'd put my cape on, my Minecraft cape, at night, and I would start making educational games using Minecraft and getting involved in the whole community. So I started looking at game-based learning using Minecraft, and we started looking at across-the-curriculum activities that we could do. Now, this year, I've started working in Wyndham Tech School, and that means that all these wonderful dreams that I've had can now come true, where I can make full across-the-curriculum activities and projects, and I can use Minecraft and many other things now, and the schools are going to come and help us deliver those, build those, and trial those. So I've been having a lot of fun. I just love this quote. The most talented, thought-provoking, game-changing people I never know. And I thought, yeah, that's me. That's a lot of teachers I know. And that's pretty much what we do. We don't actually stick to the curriculum and teach it step by step. We do go find out those all amazing activities that the kids do, and we try and bring them in. Okay, there's a lot of teachers that look at games and go, how can I use this game, like Minecraft, even Fortnite, anything that we look at, how can we use this that the kids are really involved in an educational way and really build up their skills? And one thing I found out about Minecraft is there are things called Minecraft servers where thousands of kids can get onto a community. The other thing I found out is these communities are made by teenagers. Warning bells. Now I thought, hang on a minute, teenagers controlling a whole lot of kids. Do you know what's happened? The kids have gone out there, and in this virtual world, they have made their own judicial system. They have actually worked out the rules, the etiquette, the diplomacy. So if you do something wrong, and they've determined what wrong is, you will get banned from the server. And you can go on to a forum that the kids have created, that you can then go and do a formal process to get a ban appeal. Somebody, a moderator, again, probably a 15-year-old, will get on there and look at that and determine whether you are sorry enough to actually work out to be unbanned. And they actually have this beautiful, respectful way of saying, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. That's okay, come back on. And it's actually a really beautiful system. So suddenly we've got these kids that are actually doing Minecraft, but they've actually learned how to be diplomats, they've learned about ethics and all these things, and you know what? That's the same kid that's quiet in my classroom. I wouldn't even know they've got those skills. Isn't that the soft skills we're trying to promote? And that really got me. So I had a bit of fun. And I looked at the Australian general capabilities, and by the way, everything you're about to see, I've just done for fun, on the weekends and everything. It wasn't for my school or that sort of thing. I did child supplement in my school, which was cool. But I just wanted to see what's possible. And because these lessons are actually used around the world, I've also linked them not only to the Australian curriculum, I looked at the wonderful, the American Common Core, and I've also looked at the UK frameworks, and you know what, it all works. So let's begin. This is one of my first lessons. I'm not a science teacher, but you know what, it didn't matter. I had a ball making this. This is a lesson where the kids go onto Minecraft in a flat world where there's nothing there, and they build a body. And it can be used for any class level, grade 6s up to 13, maybe even more. And we looked at the fact that you can do science and digital literacy, and the kids had a great time working out what actually a body is. And I've actually made some videos on YouTube that go through it. One is a video showing us doing the lesson. Another one is far more detailed for a teacher, looking at how that fits into the 21st century learning design. And what's happened here is the kids here have actually written information about what they researched about the human body. And here is a electronic circuitry of a heart. And in fact, that's the second heart on this particular body. See, it's way over there up there because somebody had already made a heart, and the kid said, you know what, I can make a better heart than that. So I'm going to go over there and make another heart. You can see the arm, how it's got a bit of that yellow stuff. That's lava in Minecraft. They decided that's how I'm going to represent blood. And the water over there, that used to be, before someone flooded it, it used to be a train track. And a cute little cart would go up and down, representing, of course, the oxygen going in and out. And all that sort of thing, not oxygen, the oxygen in the blood. And they worked out what the body was going to look like. I made sure it was lying down, so it's easy. They decided to put pants on him. Cool. And they worked out how the structure of the body was. And you know what? I just let them do it. I just asked some questions quickly about, how are you going to represent this? What does a heart even look like? And how are you going to represent that? And they came up with the ideas. Now here's the assessment. I listened. finally, because I wasn't doing what I'm doing right now, talking and, doing a PowerPoint presentation to them, I could listen and I could hear them talking about the problems and how to solve it. And it was beautiful. The other thing sometimes I do is I don't let them talk and they've got to type it. Because when you type, the most powerful voice in the room isn't the most powerful voice in the room. I've got a lot of autistic children. I'm actually autistic myself, and my daughter's autistic. And you know what? It's hard to get our voice across sometimes. So, if you are typing, you're equal. And I found out it's actually one of the boys in my class who is autistic. He actually was the leader. Nobody knew that because we had names that you couldn't actually recognise at the time. And they just started following him. So this one here, and stop me at 8 minutes by the way, I won't talk all night, watching me. Okay, so this one here is where we actually designed a set for a play the kids were doing. This is actually a drama class. So we designed a 32 by 32, or actually it was 8 metre by 8 metre, set in Minecraft. And the cool thing in Minecraft now is you can actually export that set. And you can see me holding it in augmented reality, and I also 3D printed that set as well. There's some really cool little dudes there. So that's what it looks like when it's printed. This one is where I was given Minecraft, a week in Minecraft as a Minecraft mentor. And I was given it for the whole world for a week, and I went, yes! So I decided to take over with Australia, and we made Anzac Cove 1-to-1 scale. And we actually studied real soldiers, and then we got the kids to actually put those soldiers on and make them talk to us. And so the kids actually did what we call like a meet and greet, where you can actually now go onto the Anzac, talk to 20 of the soldiers that the kids have put on, and actually interview them as a war correspondent. And over there you can see I 3D printed it and then used some critics and hand painted it. That's the same sort of thing. You can meet and greet any character in history. The kids will put them on a timeline in Minecraft, and then you can walk along the timeline and talk to each one of them. That I made because I was very frustrated in my Humanities class when I was given an activity sheet. And the kids thought the activity was to complete it. That's it. 1 minute. Okay, here we go. Okay, so literacy. I got to meet this wonderful guy, Sean Freya Wolf. He's written some really great books. He has actually published around the world, and I got to meet him, and we made a wonderful lesson where you go onto a world that we made from his book, A Beautiful City, and we showed how you can make your own book. So we used Minecraft as a way of developing literacy, and I got to present that with him in Houston. And then this is for fun. I had no idea why I did this. It was so much fun, but it is used around the world now, which is good. How to be a bee and how to be an ant. So I made a giant beehive and a giant ant farm. And the lessons that go with that are on the website. I'll show you in a minute. We also got this wonderful game here where you can turn off and on the hydrological cycle. I'll just quickly go through that because I've got 3 seconds. This is where I've stored my lessons. This is educationminecraft.net, and under class resources you will find hundreds of lessons. And all the worlds and the lessons are available there because one of the joys I get is that people can use them. There's no cost or anything involved. It's all about teachers sharing with teachers. It's not about Microsoft at all or anything like that. It's teachers sharing with teachers. The worlds are there, the maps are there to download and have fun with. So if you've ever thought about using Minecraft, you can come and talk to me. Thank you.
Hey everyone. My name's Brandon Friedman. I'm a co-founder of Elephant Ed. Basically, we talk about the elephant in the room. So we are a company that provides sex and relationships and health and human development education to high schools and primary schools around Victoria. Things I'm really passionate about and that you can ask me about after this. Best practice sex education, inclusive classroom practices, so how can we make sure we're really including all identities and cultures and backgrounds within our classrooms. Some of the hot topics that I guess a lot of you would probably be familiar with as educators and some of the issues that you're seeing popping up within your classrooms. Things like sexting and pornography, social media, which I'll talk a little bit more about sexting today. And discussion-based learning is something at Elephant Head we're particularly passionate about. So we've spoken a lot about today about how can we really increase those engagement levels within the classroom. So something we really try to do is make those classrooms really informal and interactive. And I think particularly talking about these social issues, it's always really nice creating that really informal environment that's a little bit different to the normal classroom setting. So I just want to start off by highlighting, I'm sure most of you are aware of the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner. They're basically the government leading online body for all online safety issues for young people and adults as well. Recently they kind of did a lot of research in the area of online safety for children and highlighted the 6 big issues that were affecting our students. And as you can see, the things like cyberbullying, online pornography, nudes and sexting, the time that they were spending online, gaming and unwanted contact and grooming were the 6 big issues that they identified as really impacting our students today. The one I'm going to focus on today, and that's been quite popular in public debate recently, is the concept of nudes and sexting, which is a topic we deal with quite extensively in the workshops that we do. But I think it's really relevant for all educators in your everyday classrooms. I think it's a topic that is really important for you guys as educators to be really aware of, no matter what subject you're teaching. I'm not sure if any of you have seen the recent documentary, The Hunting, which goes into really any classroom teacher can actually get involved in an issue like this. And I think it's really important to be really well aware of what the issue is, how it can present itself, but also be equipped with really meaningful and effective strategies to actually deal with these issues, whether or not in your classroom or in other classrooms around your school. So to start off with, just for those who don't know what sexting actually is, it's basically just the sending of provocative or sexual photos, messages or videos, which has become so popular recently, obviously with the advent of technology, the use of social media. Our students now have their phones and laptops at their fingertips and can really get involved in these type of scenarios every day, all day. As I've got they're usually sent using a mobile phone, not always. They can be sent, using their Facebook accounts on their computers, and any type of material posted online on websites. Sometimes it's referred to, as I've said, is the sending of nudes. The kids these days like to phrase it as the sending of nudes rather than necessarily sexting, which is a slightly more formal term for it. The statistics, I think, they're really frightening. We put this slide up in parent nights that we do at schools that we work with, and I think that you can always really hear a pin drop in the room when we show how common it actually is. So just to take you through a few of the statistics around this area, over 90% of teens between 14 and 17 thought that sexting actually happened amongst their peers. So it's a really astonishing amount. 1 in 3 have had some experience with sexting, be it receiving or sending or seeing others involved in it. They're 3 times more likely to experience being asked for a nude or a nearly nude image of themselves rather than sending a nude themselves. So it's actually quite frequent to be asked rather than to go willingly send it to someone else. And I think the most astonishing thing and the most frightening thing that we really need to be aware of as educators is that for those who were asked to send these pictures, over half of those requests came from strangers, complete strangers that they had never met before, that pop up on their screens, on their Snapchat, on their Instagram, on their Facebook, requesting for these really, really explicit images. I think it's really important to be aware that it doesn't have to be a traditional relationship that they might be in with someone. These requests and these images can be sent between complete strangers, and I think that's the really scary part about these types of situations. Just a bit of an insight into the distribution platforms. So we've spoken a bit about the fact that it's often sent through your mobiles or on your computers, but These are really the platforms that are most common when these types of images and videos are being sent. So the most common over there on the right is Snapchat. I'm not sure if you guys would be aware of really how Snapchat works, but I think as educators, what we tell teachers that we work with, even if you don't have these apps or you don't use these apps, I think it's really important to be aware of how they work so that you can then put yourselves in the student's shoes and be aware that when these issues do pop up, you can be kind of aware of how they're taking part, how they're really playing out in reality, and you can then be aware of the risks and how to better educate them on how to use these apps. So some of the more popular ones are, Snapchat, Facebook, through normal SMS and Instagram and WhatsApp are the key distribution channels for these types of images. So why is this an issue? Why is it important to be aware of as educators? Why is it important to really know how to respond? I think it's because there are so many risks involved in this type of behaviour taking place amongst young people. And there are multiple schools of thought on this issue. Some are of the belief that you can be involved in a really healthy, positive relationship, and this type of behaviour can take place in a healthy environment. But I think the important thing to note with young people is that they're often unaware of what we call their digital footprints and the consequences that can actually take place when you do send images and videos like this. So I think from our perspective, it's really important to make sure they're making informed decisions rather than telling them what to do and what not to do. So the first thing we've got is the loss of control, the virality. Things can go viral so easily on social media these days. Once a photo is up there, it's permanent, it can be shared, and we've seen some really scary stories in the last few years of these websites that have been created and images sent by one person can spread all over the world. Things can go wrong even in a trusted relationship. So I think this is something people often look past, that a child or a student might think they're in a really loving, committed relationship with a fellow classmate or whoever it might be, and they feel really confident sending an image or a video that's really explicit to them. But what happens when that relationship ends? What happens when maybe that relationship ends in a really bad way where someone wants to take revenge on the other person? That photo is there, it's online, it's always going to be there, and things can go wrong even though that trusting relationship was there in the first place. Images may not always be sent willingly, so like I said before, you can get pressurized requests from strangers to send this, so it can actually not be so consensual. Digital footprint, as I mentioned before, once it's online, it's always online, you can't take it off. And there are really, really serious legal ramifications as well, which I won't go into today, but there are child pornography offences that can come into play if the photos and images of someone else in an explicit way to other people. There are serious legal implications behind that as well. So I think it's really important that your students are aware of those so that they can make informed decisions before they actually send that image or video. Just one thing I really want to touch on is that traditionally in education settings or even in informal discussions amongst families or parents, the focus is often placed on the student who actually sends the nude or sends the image or video in the first place. And often a lot of blame can be placed on this person. You're in the wrong for sending it. You shouldn't have done that. You should have known better. And while there is an importance around that type of conversation and education, I think what's really important and what we focus on in our workshops around this topic is that a sexting situation involves a range of different participants, not only the person sending. So as we've got here, often someone might pressure, so person A might pressure person B to actually get a nude from person C. So there might be two people in a relationship, and one of those people's friends might come to them and say, hey, can you just get me a nude of your girlfriend or your boyfriend? There's actually often more than just the one or two parties involved. And then that person can then pressure them to actually send them the nude to then pass on. The person who then receives that, the third person, can then share that online and it can go wherever. As I said, the digital footprint can take it wherever it wants to go online. So I think what is really important as educators to focus on is not only the person sending the image, but who's doing the pressuring in the first place, who's actually pressurizing the person to send the image, and what are their motivations, why are they doing that, how are they feeling, are they under pressure from someone else to get the image? And I think once you can focus on that, you're really tackling the issue at its core, and stopping it and having that really preventative approach before it happens, rather than reacting to the person who sent it in a really negative way. So I think it's really important to focus on all these different participants in that situation. So I think the most important thing I think for you guys as educators to take away from this type of conversation is really how to deal with this if it does happen. And you don't have to be a health and PE teacher for this to pop up in your classroom. As I said before, you'll see in the series of The Hunting, I recommend you all watch it. It's really, really great. It can happen to any teacher. A student can approach you and ask for help in this type of situation. So I think it's really important to be aware of what to actually do if you see it pop up. What advice can you give that student? So I think the first thing is delete the photo. That could be if they've been sent it themselves, or if they've seen it on social media. The most important thing is to actually take it down as soon as possible before it can start spreading. Number 2 is to untag themselves or untag a friend. Once you're tagged in something on Facebook or Instagram, it's linked to your account, it's linked to your identity. If you can immediately untag yourself from that image, you can then kind of remove yourself from that association and from, I guess, the harassment that can follow. I think the most important thing is number 3, and that's the reporting avenues that are available within these areas. So number 1, you can actually report it to the social media service that the image has been shared on. So you can report it to Facebook, you can report it to Snapchat, to Instagram, and they can do the best of their ability to actually take that down and stop it from spreading. Number 2 is reporting it to a teacher. We tell students you can approach a teacher that you feel really comfortable with. It doesn't have to be the principal, the assistant principal, and let them know what's going on, particularly if it's within that classroom setting or within the school environment. And number 3, I think what is really important, I've mentioned the eSafety Commissioner. They're really the leading body in this. They've got their own reporting system on their website that students and young people and anyone can go to report a situation like this once it's gotten out of hand or something's been shared without consent. I'd really recommend directing them to the eSafety Commissioner. Obviously, it's important to tell them to talk to someone about it, not to hold up, not to keep it within, and to take care of themselves, to take care of yourselves as teacher if you are kind of involved in these situations. Self-care is so important. That's kind of all I've got for today. I just want to stress that, as I've said, you don't have to be specifically, teaching online safety within schools. These things do pop up in all classroom settings. I don't think it's a good idea to turn a blind eye to these things. Be informed, do your research, watch those films and documentaries, be aware of those kind of social devices and social media platforms so that you can then pass on those informed perspectives to your students. If you've got any questions on anything, I'll be sticking around. You can come have a chat. But that's all for me today. Thank you.
So hey guys, I'm James. I'm from Cool Australia. We make online lesson plans for teachers. I'm not actually here wearing my Cool Australia hat today though. I'm actually here wearing one of my other hats. I'm a researcher, I'm a scholar. That's one of the things I do with all that free time that I don't have. And my area of expertise is video games. So I work in digital humanities. If you're familiar with digital humanities, often one of the things that we hear about it is people working in the humanities looking to find new digital ways to improve the disciplines that they're already using. So if you've got an archivist, they're looking at how can we digitize these records? How can we get them up online? How can we scan these books and make these more publicly available? I kind of move in the opposite direction. My question is more, how can we use the disciplines that we've already got to start analysing these digital tools and these digital platforms? So I'm an English major by trade, English literature, and I also just grew up playing video games. So one of the big questions for me is, how do these video games tell stories, right? I'm a story guy, I'm a literature guy. What's happening in this new space? Right? And it's one of the things historically that we would have seen coming through with film. You go back, film comes in, a whole bunch of people saying, right, what is this? What's this new form? How does it tell stories? And we're seeing the same sort of thing happening today with video games. So the kind of classic formulation for video games how they tell stories is that there's an intersection between the real rules and the fictional world. Okay, I'll give an example of what we're talking about there. If you take something like chess, right? You've got your pawns, and they have a set of rules governing how they move and how they can take other pieces. Right? They move just one space forwards, one at a time. They just kind of plod forwards, and they take forwards on those diagonals. Right? Those are the real rules governing how they move and how they capture. And those rules actually also kind of integrate into like a fictional world. Right? So if you're teaching someone how to play chess, you get those kids' books, those kind of things. Often one of the things they'll say is they'll depict the pawns as like foot soldiers. Right? And in some of the kids' books you can find they'll sometimes give them like pikes or spears or something to kind of try and explain why they're attacking on a diagonal. Right? So they loop it into this fictional world to give kind of deeper meaning to these real rules. And the same thing with the knights. Right? They're the only piece that can move over other pieces or through other pieces. And the kind of idea there is, well, they're knights, they're dudes in armour on horses. Right, so they can kind of jump over other pieces. So there's this interplay between the real rules and the fictional world. So what I want to do today is just, Stephen donated his face for this, he doesn't know it, but he does now. Just a little experiment. Here's a game that I'm going to propose to you. And I just want to think a bit about how the rules of this game say things about the fictional world, right? Because if we're reading video games, this is one of the places that we can start. So here's a game, right? It's set in the classroom. You've got your teacher, you've got Stephen, and he's got a bunch of different kids, right? And some of these kids are clearly very good kids. They're not troublesome, they're not naughty. To all intents and purposes, you can just ignore those kids. They're good, they're fine. They're set, right? And then you've got the bad kids. Up top there, you've got those naughty kids. And as the teacher, you control the teacher. You have to run around the room to each of those kids and make sure that they're still on target. So maybe you have to click on them, run around, click on them, that kind of thing. And then after a certain amount of time, they'll start getting jittery again. You've got to do the rounds again, keep them all on target. So it's kind of like whack-a-mole in a classroom. I was trying to come up with a better name for it, like whack a student just didn't seem right. But it's kind of like whack-a-mole in a classroom, right? So here's the question, that's our game. Maybe you get points for the amount of time that your kids are on task. Maybe you set the timer, maybe at a minute, and that's a round, and it's who can get the most points, something like that. So with that kind of structure, here's the question, what do those game rules say about the fictional world? What do those rules say about how teaching works and how classrooms work? Turn to the person next to you or beside you, or don't turn to anybody at all. If you're just tired, it's okay, I understand, it's 4:30. Turn to the person next to you, couple minutes. What do those game rules say about the fictional world that's put forth there? All right, let's jump back in. Somebody who's feeling confident, what are some of the things you guys were talking about? What are some of the things that these game rules say about the fictional world? It's hostile. Go on, say more. Yeah, it's a very adversarial kind of world, right? And that's definitely something that's coded, I guess coded into kind of the game structure, is thinking about a classroom in terms of like winning and losing, right? Yeah, adversarial, definitely, yeah.
Well, we thought if we move Steve into the middle,
Yeah.
move little smiley girl to where Steve is,
Yeah,
it's no longer adversarial, it's collaborative.
go on.
Well, so that Steve is no longer trying to direct kids, but it's a community. So it's not top down.
Oh yeah, well, change the rules of the game. May as well. Yeah, anybody else?
Steve's a diamond and the rest are kind of silver.
Yeah,
Sets that as different.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you do not ever have to hit the good ones. You can
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some kids that you can ignore. That's a weird system to have around the classroom, right? That's not how teaching works. You guys know that. And also the idea that like some kids just are good kids and some kids are bad kids, right? There's no crossover here. There's no complexity, no nuance. They're just good kids are never bad, and bad kids are only ever like tamed momentarily. Like that's a weird situation to be in. So it's not a super like accurate depiction of how teaching actually works, right? And how classrooms actually work. And to some extent that's fine, right? This isn't really a very realistic game. We have giant cartoon like skinhead children on the like board. That's not, it's not meant to be realistic, right? So if we're talking about this from like a literature perspective, a text analysis kind of perspective, I guess you could say, there's questions of genre to be asking here as well, right? Clearly it's silly, it's a bit of fun, right? It's not realism, right, as a genre. Yeah, definitely. They're good kids, there's bad kids. Oh, this is it. So I've shown this in a couple of places before. I ran this through with a, sorry?
Genders.
You got right ahead of me. Yeah, I showed this to a year 13, so year 12 in New Zealand classroom, and one of the things that they said, one of them put up their hand and they said, "Isn't it interesting that all the bad ones are boys?" I said, "Yeah, I didn't actually plan that, but well done you've noticed." So that's one of the places that you want to start if you want to be talking about how to like read video games, how they operate as a narrative form. Yeah? 1 minute, that's all good, I'm nearly done. And obviously, yeah, this is kind of a funny one, it's kind of we're being silly, we're having some fun, but there are kind of some more serious questions that come up in these kind of things, right? So, we've got a screenshot here from Call of Duty, and we've got a game where you're playing as the Americans, you're off in the Middle East, and you're shooting Arabic people, and it's adversarial, and it's very political, and it's all suddenly got really, really serious. Right, so there are really serious and weighty kind of questions that we can be asking around these kind of games, and the way that they're structured actually gives us some really interesting kind of questions that we can ask about them. What does it mean that these are the game rules? What does it mean that this is how the game is structured? What is that saying about the fictional world, and maybe also in turn about our world? Cheers, thank you.
I think it's actually perfect that I've followed in James here. But before we do that, everyone stand up, please, because you've been sitting down on your asses. And stretch. Good. Okay, so now while you're up, I'm going to play the game called Gwittum. Gwittum. Guess what's in the teacher's mind? Gwittum. What is the capital of Australia? Hand up. Yes.
Canberra.
Maybe. Canberra. Well, I was actually thinking the capital of Australia is A, because it's an English lesson, see? So you're thinking of geography. Sit down. Very good. So you can talk to me afterwards. I'm going to talk about student engagement today, but I'm quite well known about the traps in school funding and school achievement, whether private schools are better than public schools and where the money should go. I've also got a lot of information about civics and citizenship education, and this morning I presented on the Are You Mad program, or as I like to say, Are You Mad? Are you making a difference? And I'd suggest that you at Canterbury Primary might look at the Are You Mad program to integrate it into your inquiry programs. Could be fantastic. But I'm most skilled about being a grandparent. That's what I'm really on about. I retired in February this year, so I'm now a full-time grandparent. I want to talk about student engagement. What is it, and how do we get it? Oh my God, that light just came on. Oh. How can we improve outcomes for all children, but in particular, children from at-risk backgrounds. Steve, are these slides going to be available for people? Yeah, so you don't need to take pictures of them. Absolutely. I think this is running out of batteries. Is this the image that children have about student engagement? And some of the earlier speakers talk about student engagement. So I'm going to ask you a question. When I go to the bathroom and it's on red at the cubicle and the toilet's engaged, what does it mean? What does it mean? Someone's there, it's occupied, yeah? Sometimes it might be red when it says occupied. Occupied. When I'm ringing my children on the phone, my mobile, and all I get is they're not answering because they're on the phone with someone else. The phone is engaged. Another word for that? Busy. The phone is busy. When I got down on my knee and I said to my beloved 47 years ago, "Will you marry me?" I was proposing an engagement. What does that mean? Offering commitment. So the word engagement has at least a number of different meanings. Occupied, busy, or commitment. Too often in our classrooms, we mistake engagement for busyness, for being occupied. What do we say in the classroom? Heads down, thumbs up. It means the children are not causing trouble, like those bald-headed, evil children. Now, they are occupied. They might be busy, but we don't know what they're doing. When their head's down, they're probably looking at their mobile phones and texting and sexting and whatever else they might be doing, Brandon. So, is this the image that children and teachers have of each other? Every student is a Bart Simpson, and every teacher is Mr. Skinner, the horrible principal. We're running out of batteries here. So, what have we found out about engagement? Engagement, Fred Newman, 1986, tells us it's difficult to define operationally, but we know it when we see it, and we certainly know it when it's missing. McFadden and Munn's University of Western Sydney researchers said it's at the messy point of teachers and students responding to each other in relation to classroom discourse and practices where we are truly going to see whether or not students feel that the school is for them. In other words, commitment, whether it's working for them. This graph represents the decline of student engagement over time. I have a granddaughter in prep. Everything is wonderful. She can't wait to do whatever the teacher asks her to do. And she'll even do her homework willingly. And she shows it off to people. She has genuine 100% commitment. Those of you who teach grade 6, anyone here? Teach grade 6 or have taught grade 6, you know by the end of grade 6 how excited they are to do any more work. All they're thinking of is next year, year 7. But when they get into year 7, they have these high expectations. It's going to be different. I'm going to get a locker. I'm going to change rooms. And after first term, they're disengaged already. And it goes down and down and down to those horrible middle years of year 9, where we start to try and separate the kids, kind of like an apartheid system in our schools. Get rid of those year 9s, move them somewhere else, another part of the campus, a different campus, or if you're in a rich private school, you send them off somewhere else in the country. Let them go there for a year. And then when they come back, they might be human beings again. And when we get up to year 11 and 12 and towards the VCE, the pointy end of education, we start to find a bit more commitment happening and engagement rises. There are three different understandings of engagement. There's the behavioural one, it's about participation. There's the effective one, the commitment. And then there's the cognitive one. It's about investment. It's about investment. And this is distilling a whole PhD that I'm doing right now for you. So, 2 minutes. Good. I want to talk about those naughty kids. Right down the bottom, you see there's levels of engagement. Even naughty kids are engaged, but they're not engaged in what you want them to be engaged in. They're disrupting, they're doing it intentionally, because what you're doing in the class is disengaged. I had a question in my first session this morning about badly behaved children in the classroom. And my response is no, it's poorly organised classroom teaching. When I was doing my year 12 many years ago, in 1968, yep, it's okay, I was strategically compliant. I worked very, very hard, but the only reason I did that was because I needed to get a scholarship to go to university. Because my parents could not afford to send me to university, so they said you had to work hard. I worked hard, I did well, but you think I can remember anything? So there are different levels of engagement. This comes from a guy called Phil Schlechte, S-C-H-L-E-C-H-T-Y. He's written a lot about student engagement. We'll skip that. So, I end. What did I learn about student engagement? Core pedagogy and pedagogical reciprocity. Core pedagogy, this is what we teach. What we teach has to connect with the student's cultural background. The students have to see ownership in the work, that they are themselves represented in it. It has to respond to their needs actively and consciously. Now, too often we talk about Ron in the classroom. Why do we need to learn this? You'll need to know it for later on. And finally, and most importantly because it comes last, E, empowering. What we are doing with the children in our classroom empowers them to see that education can make a difference in their lives. But that's the what. The how we teach has to be teachers and students learning with and from each other. When those two things are working hand in hand, you will have authentic engagement in your classrooms. Thank you.
Yes, I get the good mic now. So just so if you don't know anything about the Teach Meet afterwards, we do a Teach Eat. And that just involves all of us going to have a chat and have some good food. Stephen has picked a restaurant for us called Bang Pop, is that right? Which is about 200 meters or so, 300 meters away from where we currently are. Stephen has some packing up to do, but I will gladly try and lead us there, even though my directional compass just continues to spin in any direction. So I'll probably use Google Maps. Either way, if you do want to come, we don't need a booking. You're welcome to follow us there for some food and conversation. The next point is, if you would like to host a Teach Me, obviously it doesn't have to be at a conference. It's at a school. We're still looking for one for maybe term 4, but also even into next year as well. If you'd like to host one, it's super easy to do, and Stephen and I can also help you with that, and there's always willing speakers. There's been a really great interest, which has been really great. We can definitely help you with that, and there's tons of resources on that website that we've kind of reinvigorated a little bit, but it's really great repeating for your school as well, and also for your personal learning. So if you'd like to do it, please come talk to us, or even at this Teach Eat, come talk to us. Is there anything else we'd like to add? Otherwise, so thank to Stephen, because he did all the work to organize this one. I was just looking good probably, but anyway, otherwise, see you at the Teach Eat.